Hello, everyone. Here I am. Again, it's a Saturday. I'm still playing with the few pens that I had left on my desk. And I found a bottle of ink that was more inky than dirty water. In this case, it is Sheaffer Black, I think. Well, it's still pretty dirty water, but at least you can see it. I just hate using a new bottle of ink for just scribbling. I wonder what this ink color was supposed to be. Is it supposed to be brown? Let's look it up. Oh, brown. It's supposed to be that color. Well, let's mix it up a bit, see if it's mixing it up makes it any browner. Yes, ink can go bad. Oh, it's pretty. This is pretty faded stuff. So today, what am I going to do today? I found this little container in our free spot in the building where people put books they are done reading or things. And I was thinking I could pour a little bit of shellac in here, and this would keep it airtight so it wouldn't dry out. Because I had done it, I had put shellac in a thing that had a screw cap, and I ended up, it's very hard to take the screw off because the shellac dried in it. So it's a first world problem. And there are a lot of other problems in the world that might be more important to deal with than shellac drying out. I'm still playing with these Skyline pens that just happen to be sitting here. And I think these are the ones that I got in Philly. This one's scratchy. It is just the nib's not set in there right. That's better. I think this is a nib that I yanked out of a pen to try to find a nib for a customer. And this may have been one of the ones that I was thinking for him. There we go. This is better. If anyone wants to say anything, I'm happy to listen. Look at my fingers, they're already dirty. So today, there's at my local brew pub, there will be a live band, and for St. Paddy's Day, and I may go there to do some drawings on my iPad or on paper and pencil. Tomorrow, the local urban sketcher group will go to the museum at Boston College, and that is a place that I've been to a few times, couple times maybe, and I look forward to seeing it again tomorrow. And I may draw with pen and ink rather than my iPad. But as usual, when I go to these places to draw, I say to myself, why didn't I bring my iPad? What I'm seeing in front of me would have been perfect for my iPad or for pen and ink when I brought pencils. And luckily, pen and ink and pencils and that kind of stuff, they don't weigh that much, so I can bring both. Can't I? I was hoping someone would come in here, someone that might want to talk with me. So let's talk about this pen. I talked about Skylines yesterday. I'll talk about one of my other favorite go-tos. They may not be my EDC, everyday carry, for those of you that don't know what that means, but another favorite type of pen is a Waterman lever filling fountain pen of some sort. They can be plain black, they can be skinny, and they can be longer, and they can be fatter, and they can be covered in sterling overlay, and they can have extra gold bands on them and stuff like that. But essentially, it's more or less variations of one of these three pens. And I think in many ways they are the perfect size of a pen. The 52 number, this pen is very comfortable in the hand, and the width of the barrel is quite good for most people, I've discovered. The slightly thinner version, I think many people find too thin. You know, if they had the choice of this one or this one to buy, they would choose this one for the most part. Why would I have bunches of these, and I've used them for drawing and calligraphy. Why would I not choose this than this? What is the difference? Do I feel this has more control? Bigger, easier to hold on to? This is like kind of like a fat, you know, one of those bicycles that has kind of fat tires, not the big fat ones, but what used to be on the bicycle that we learned how to ride when we were kids. In my era, they were bicycle tires that were maybe this thick. And then the 3 speeds or the 5 speeds, they had the thinner, more elegant tire, and that's what these seem like. And nowadays, I have one of these fatter tire bicycles. I haven't ridden it in a year, but I have one. I presume it's still in the basement of my building. But I feel, you know, it's nice and heavy, and I feel more anchored to the ground with this than I do with this one, the thinner tires. It sort of makes me feel safer. These fancy white-walled pens. Flixius Maximus with the Grinch icon. So Flixius, do I know you yet? Have I talked to you before? Have we been on a date? You don't have to answer any of these questions if you don't want to, but I don't remember. Just a lurker. Would you like to, are you a pen lurker? Do you like pens? Do you have something you'd like to talk about? Strong opinion on anything. Brussels sprouts, spinach, Donald J. Trump. I have a feeling if I came up with a few more things, you might suddenly have a strong opinion. Now, you might be one of those people who will try to see two sides of any story and weigh the pros and cons, but all of those can go in the trash. Well, that can be a strong opinion, putting a human in the trash. I learned yesterday that a very close friend of mine died, neighbor of mine. His name was Patrick Chassé. Chassé, C-H-A-S-S-E. He was a noted landscape architect, especially dealing with restoring rather grand gardens at rather grand estates, and pulling these things back together. And but he was also very, very funny, and his humor was always really, really good. But there was a little hint of sophomoric humor. He sort of had jokes that would be appreciated by someone in the 8th grade. When he would tell a joke, a pre-created joke, it would be the jokes that you would hear in the 8th grade. But when he spoke, he was very good with puns, and he had a brilliant way of describing life or people or gardens magnificently. So he moved out of this building. He sold the unit that he had in the building here in hopes of spending his retirement writing a book about moss and living in Mount Desert Island, Maine. But he got ill and had to deal with lots of doctor visits and downsizing and all the stuff one does when one gets to be old. And so I hadn't seen him personally in many, many years, though we used to have coffee every morning for nearly 30 years when he lived in my building here. So, Patrick Chassé. And, his death, I feel, of course, guilty for not visiting him in the last few years. He didn't live that far away, and he encouraged me to come up, take the train up and stuff like that, but I never did. So, bad me. Fixius, you still here, Fixius? Is anyone still here? Fixius, or is it Fictious Maximus? Fixious. So can I ask questions of you? Like where you're from on this planet? Well, it's sort of hard doing fictitious. That XCH sound doesn't roll off the tongue as well as the X sound being more audible along with the Maximus. I like that. So Fixius Maximus, I like. What does Fixius mean? Something really big. So Fixius, can I play the dinner party game with you? Are you willing to be a guinea pig for that? Where's my book? If you don't know what the dinner party game is, I will tell you. You like the word. Cool. So the dinner party game is if you had the ability to invite 8 people to dinner, one of those being you, Fixius, but the other people that you're inviting to dinner, they had to have been real at one point. They could be dead now, but they had to be real at one point. And everyone, for purposes of our little game here, everyone speaks the same language. So we don't have to deal with someone not knowing what's being said. And would you like to play this game? Well, you decide. I'm going to see if I can find the book. Okay, well, you keep thinking. I mean, don't make it random. I mean, think about this as a what, including you, what 5 people would you think it would be really, really fun to invite to a party where ideas can be discussed, or giggles and jokes can be made, or whatever. It's not just random people. You would never just invite random people to your house for dinner that are alive. You'd make sure that, if I invite Tom, I know he'll really get a kick out of meeting Jane. So, okay, where's the book? found a hat. Well, I can always transcribe your list into the book when I find the book, but it's always fun to see the book. Just to compare with what other people might have said. So we're just gonna, I will transcribe the list when I do find the other book. Okay, where are you, book? I'm just gonna look one more minute. Ouch. I give up. Okay, we're going to write them down there. Fixius. So dinner party. How many people are you going to invite? 8 total or 6 total? Maximum. So we'll start with Fixius. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you might want 7 and 8. Well, that's quick and fast. Hardly random. Stanley Kubrick, Steven Spielberg, Robin Williams. Okay, now he's a little different, but Kurt Vonnegut. Yeah, you need to remove someone if you're. So before I write any more, I'll have to. Donald Fagen. I don't know who Donald Fagen is, and I don't know David Sanborn or David Gilmour. But you'll tell me who these people are. So we have 2 so far, 2 that I know filmmakers, an actor, a writer, and another actor and filmmaker. And you, Fixius. Do you, Sanborn? Okay, I'll remove Sanborn. So are you, so we do Vonnegut. We do Orson, Wells. Make sure to serve the crumb crisp coating on the cod that, what's his name, caught in the fjords. Gilmour is a guitarist of Pink Floyd, Don Fagen, Steely Dan. Okay, so 2 guitarists. So David Gilmour. And Donald Fagen. So we have 2 musicians, 3 directors, 2 actors, if we include Orson as an actor, with Robin and Kurt Vonnegut. So we have only one writer. I mean, specific writer. I'm sure other of these people may have written a book, but he's clearly a writer. And Fixius, what do you do? What's your job, passion, whatever it is, career? Web developer, computer, web developer. So that's, I think, that closest would be a writer, I would think. Though maybe not. I mean, often you see websites that are more picture based than word based, more visual than word. But I think that's a pretty good group. Stephen King and Kubrick would fight. What about how The Shining was created, was realized? Sometimes fights are kind of fun to watch. One of my followers here had his dinner party, and they all included the first ladies and the women that their president husbands had screwed. So we had Stormy Daniels and Melania, and we had what's her name, Monica Lewinsky and Mrs. Clinton. So the idea was to watch the food being flung. But who knows, maybe they would have gotten along really well and just made fun of their husbands. So Fixius, where are you in the wide world? Here's one hemisphere, here's the other. United States, South America, Mexico, Canada, Greenland. Soon we're going to have all of that. And then you've got Europe, Africa, India, Asia, Australia, Russia. So which one of these? Michigan. Oh, I wish again I was back in Michigan, right there, roughly. If that's the United States, you'd be under a blob of ink right now. And do you have pens? Do you collect pens? Do you use pens? Meanwhile, I'm gonna, while you're thinking of that answer, let me just see again if I can find that book. Not a single one. So what made you, of all the gin joints in the world, what made you follow or to lurk with me? And you're welcome to lurk. There's nothing wrong with it. Just wondering why you chose me, how you chose me. Oh, okay. Well, that's nice of YouTube to toss me to the great unknown. I'm not asking this for, well, I am asking, I'm sort of curious, what is it that you find is interesting about this, what I tend to present, which is generally a messy desktop, pens and doodling and random conversation. But anyway, I find it interesting to know what it is that people find interesting. Workings of the pens. Yeah, they are, for someone who doesn't have a single one of these, and maybe never would want to have a single one of these, let alone 10 or 1,000. What I like about any sort of tool that you hold in your hand and draw with or write with, these are just amazing. And the vintage ones are especially amazing because of their variety of the line they make. Modern pens don't have this ability really, especially when it comes to very, very fine line. Hey, KB, BK. KB or BK? I did ask KB or BK what they wanted for their dinner party, but can't remember now. And right now I'm trying to remember where KB or BK are from. Oh, I'm thinking it's coming close to me, into my little head. Seems to me at one point you lived in the United States, but now you live back in India, is it? Oh, would you like to play the dinner party game now? You know the dinner party game, right? Good. But you used to live here in the United States at one point, it seemed to me. Good. See, I am remembering some of these things. Well, we can play the dinner party game. So the dinner party game is essentially, I have to remember to transcribe this to the other book once I find it. So KB, the game is, I'm curious to know who you would invite to a dinner party. And the dinner party can have 6 people or 8 people, and you have to be one of them. 7, 8. So these may, and the people you invite can be living or dead, but they have to have been a real person at one point. And for the dinner parties, to make it easy for people to converse, everyone speaks the same language. So if you wanted Napoleon and Otto von Bismarck, they both can understand each other. So, but my advice would be to do your best to make it a fun dinner party, or a dinner party where people enjoy each other's company, or they don't have to like each other, but where maybe the conversation would be interesting to listen to and take part in. So sometimes if you get people that are complete opposites, it might be fun to see how that works. So I'm going to stand up and I'm going to look one more time for this book. So you work on thinking who you're going to invite. I found the book. It was right on the floor, right underneath my fat ass. So if Fixius is still here, I will add you to this page. Yours is a real sausage fest, meaning they're all boys. Is that the sausage you're talking about? Works for me. Fixius Maximus. So one, you had Fixius. Two, you had. We can change. You can have another dinner party another time. Stanley Kubrick. I can't remember how to spell his name, but I'll read it. Steven Spielberg. Robin Williams. Kurt Vonnegut. Orson Welles. David Gibson. And Donald Fagen. So I think what you should do for Orson Welles' sake is to serve the things that he had such a hard time making those commercials about, the Mrs. Buckley's green beans, peas or beans, and they were peas, and Charlie Briggs's beef, and Jan Svensson's, or whatever his name was, his cod, crumb crisp coating. Do you know the not the French wine? You can serve that too, the Parmesan wine, but he did a series of commercials for this food company who sold, among other things, peas, beef, and cod, crumb crisp coating. And he had such a hard time getting through, and he was just a bitch telling the producers and the directors how awful it was written, the script was written, and one of the lines was if you know, they've suggested that he needs to emphasize the word in, and he said, there's no way. If you can show me a way to emphasize the word in, I'll go down on you. Okay, so KB has his list. Wow. Pierre Gustafson, I'm invited. Oh dear. I'm going to be so scared. So KB, 2, Mark Twain, 3 is Kurt Vonnegut. So you're going to have to make sure that you both of you people don't have your dinner on the same night. Or Sophia Loren. 5. Sir Yehudi Menuhin. Sir Yehudi Menuhin. 6. Should we say Richard Feynman? Feynman, rather. Feynman. Well, I know who you mean, Feynman. 7. Peer. 8. Who else was 8? Oh, John Cleese. There we go. Okay, let me look over your list. There's nothing wrong with it, I'm sure. But let me just see if sometimes I think, oh, can you add one more person? Let's take out, what's his name? Sophia Loren. There's only one dame. Only one dame. My father didn't meet her, but my father was in a movie, The Grumpy-Year-Old Men, which was being filmed in Minnesota. And my father was in the crowd scene at the bar where she walks in, and Walter Matthau's character is sitting at the bar, and Sophia Loren has to, at one point, take an ice cube out of a cocktail, and she rubs it on her chest, and she is sort of trying to turn Walter Matthau on, but they kept on having to redo the take and take and take. And she came in one day and she looked at my father and said to my dad, "Oh, I'm getting so wet." So anyway, John Cleese, Peer, and then Yehudi Menuhin. I think everyone would have a good time, except I don't know anything about Yehudi Menuhin other than he's a conductor. Is he a conductor? I'll see if I can find that scene. So if you would, he's a violinist as well. Okay. Okay, yeah, of course. Well, he seems to be the odd man out here. I mean, he's a performer, so Sophia and he are sort of alike, but I'm just wondering whether you might want to remove him and maybe add Rita Rudner. Does that make sense to you? Let me just find Grumpy-Year-Old Men. Well, I've certainly looked at this before. So here's the bar scene. So she comes in, and everyone looks at her. And my father's there with the white hair. So let me zoom in. Come on, Father. Where are you? He's at 14 seconds, 13 seconds, 14 seconds. So my dad is right there with the white hair, the mop of white hair. He's putting on his glasses. He's supposed to be playing scratch ticket or something, drinking a beer, playing scratch tickets. And everyone looks at her as she comes in. So you see him looking up and putting his glasses on. That was his claim to fame for moviedom. So shall we add Rita instead of Sir Yehudi? Who are we going to cross out for Yehudi? So John Cleese and Rita would be great. I think I'm the odd man out, but I want to go. I want to be there too. Rita Rudner. I don't know who this is, but so we got a comedian, an actress, comedian, actor, scientist, writer, humorist, you, and me. So let's find a good tentative. Okay, so we can go back to this and we can change it later at some point. You still here, Maximus? Fixius Maximus. Well, we can take him out. So if you're going to take him out, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be boy, girl anymore at this day and age, but maybe another woman might not hurt. And right now, the oldest person we have in the group is Mark Twain. So maybe someone more from his neck of the woods. But what dame, actor, actress, writer would we have? Gertrude Stein. What a downer. Alice B. Toklas and her pot brownies. Okay, well, Susan Sontag. So she was a philosopher, movie critic, intellectual type. I think she'd have a great time with many of these folks. So I think that's good. Yeah, I look forward to it. So what pen do you have currently inked up, KB? Oh, Schaefer touchdown with the Triumph nib. Or a standard nib. For Fixius, that is a pen from the 40s. And Schaefer nibs were notoriously firm, but with the Feather Touch nib, they had a nib that's very similar to this one, very often just slightly flexible. most of the time they're relatively fine. Yeah, yeah. They're great. They're great pens. Here's what the dinner party looks like. Fixius. This is one of the ways I drew it. I drew it differently. At one point, I have a large drawing of it somewhere. Someplace. Who knows where that place is? In the book. I have it in this book because this is the guest book that a pen collector friend gave to me, and I just love the different kinds of handwriting people have. Angular, rounded, backwards tilt, very tiny. This is a very mildewy page. A whiff of mildew came right up off of that. Yeah. Some of them can be firmer. But most of the time when I see the Feather Touch nib, they tend to be very thin metal, and that generally means flex. Okay, who else is in the room? We have Maximus, Fixius, Maximus, and we've got KB or BK. Anyone else in the room want to say hi? You don't have to say much, but you can say hi. Hey, Friedrich. Would you like to join us live? Friedrich is a pen collector, and I think I can call him without him disagreeing. He's a pen historian. He knows actual facts. Oh, here's the dinner party. That's the drawing I did of the dinner party. We just played the dinner party game, Friedrich. And Friedrich has played it at least once. Would you like to join us right now? Friedrich, do you have your pants on? Sometimes Friedrich doesn't have pants on. Can I say that out loud to the entire world, Friedrich? It doesn't mean that he's shows live with his junk on display. It just means he hadn't put on his pants. He's, oh dear. Okay. He often is broadcasting from home, and he lives essentially alone. He lives he's a caregiver for his father. So his father is your father in the waiting? Is it for your father that you're in the waiting room? Oh, your appointment. Okay, I'm sorry for. I was about to say, you don't have to answer me, and certainly you don't have to answer me when we're talking about you in personally. I will say though that Friedrich's father is dealing with lots of issues that are part of being a senior citizen. So, Friedrich, I discovered yesterday that a friend of mine had died, and I sort of knew that it was on the road to that because, well, we're all on that road, but his health has been declining for the last 5 or 6 years, and the last time I did text with him, he made it sound like things were serious. And anyway, he died, and he's sorely missed by those who knew him. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met. And what was nice about him is he was a great punster, and people like Russell too is a great punster, and puns happen, I think, unintentionally. Your mouth opens up and words come out, but there's no way for the punster to actually stop or edit those words. It just comes out. It's like sort of like Tourette's. Patrick was a landscape architect, and he did lots of historic garden restorations for, among other people, Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart bought an estate on Mount Desert Island that had been built by Edsel Ford. And when she bought the estate, she wanted to have the estate go back to its original condition. I think the house didn't need any renovations to it, but the gardens had gone awry, and so Patrick helped her with the gardens. But one of the things that was funny about a funny element about the the Edsel Ford house was Mrs. Edsel Ford hated creases on tablecloths. So she had drawers, flat file drawers, that would hold the tablecloth without it being folded. Now, how that works, I don't know. Do you have a flat file in the linen closet that's 10 feet wide or 20 feet wide and 6 feet deep? I don't know that. Whether that's possible, but anyway, that was one of the things that he told me about that he learned from her, that he learned from Martha Stewart. Another story that he told me about Martha Stewart was, and I think it's true, that she pointed to at the end of a walkway or a driveway to one of her houses was a granite post that was maybe a foot by a foot or maybe 10 inches by 10 inches. And it went up out of the ground 10 feet or so, 8 feet, whatever. And then there was a light fixture on top. So even though you don't need a picture of this, here's the ground. Here's Martha Stewart, the glass of wine. Here's her post. Here's her light fixture. Does that look like Martha Stewart? Close enough. So down below the ground, this post would have to be probably 4 feet underground. And then there would be a wire that would go to the power in the house and then turn the light bulb on. So she pointed to it and said to Patrick, "You know how I got this?" "No," Patrick said. She said, "This is where you need this piece of paper." She said, "The granite came from Vermont, Vermont, New England, quarried in Vermont, and it was cut down to 14 feet by, let's say, 8 inches by 8 inches, this big, long pole. And her house is in Connecticut. So here's Vermont, here's Connecticut, here's Boston. And this is the route that this pole took. From there, it was put on a truck, driven somewhere to a train station, put on a boxcar, driven across the country to Washington State or maybe Los Angeles or San Diego or some port city here, put on a truck, moved to the port, put on a boat. The boat went across the Pacific Ocean to China, taken off the boat, put on a cart, put on a train, put on wherever, where they had a facility where they could drill a hole an inch in diameter from one end of the pole to the other. Then, when that was done, they put it back and repeated the process and got it there. So, think of the carbon footprint for that little fixture, light fixture. It seems to me that if we want to get rich, we should open up a drilling company. I mean, how difficult is it to drill a hole 14 feet long in a piece of granite? Now, this may have been 20 years ago that this operation happened. Maybe there are better drills that we have now. Maybe we can have little nano robots go in there and with their little tiny pick and little tiny shovel and dig it that way, or laser beams or something. But in this particular case, Martha Stewart, in order to get this in her front porch, it had to go halfway around the world and then halfway back. The end. So that was one of the stories I heard from Patrick. Patrick had a number of very well-heeled clients, Rockefellers and that ilk. He chose not to do a job for Jay Leno. Jay Leno's office secretary, Jay Leno's person called up Patrick and wanted Patrick to design his house on Martha's Vineyard. And Patrick refused to do that. Mainly, who knows why, but I think Patrick was more interested in restoring vintage or existing gardens, and maybe Jay Leno's was brand new, and maybe he knows what it's like dealing with clients that maybe think they know more than he does. Whereas if a client is asking for something to be restored to what it had been like before, Patrick, they wouldn't question him. There's another story that he told me, which I think is really cute, and it sounds too fantastical to be true, but it also sounds entirely possible that it would be true. One of his clients, and he had some clients that he just went to their place and pointed and said, do this or do that. And only later did he find out that, the client was the governor of Massachusetts in one case. And for that particular job, it seemed almost like a no-brainer in some ways, but, the landscape architect or the architect that they had there, here's the big estate, here's the road. And rather than ruining the view, he said, well, don't have the driveway do this, have the driveway do this. Have it meander through the property and plant trees to hide it. And, oh, that's a good idea. So anyway, Patrick sent him the bill. But anyway, there was this one guy who he was a publisher, and he owned all of the magazines that came out sort of at the time of personal computers. Desktop computers came out, so he had Computer World or whatever world, Mac World or PC World or PC Today or all of those things. He was the publisher, and he decided at one point he had enough of that and sold the company to his children to run, and he took the money and ran. And he bought a chunk of land in upstate New York, and wanted to build a house. And at the time that it was being built, it might have been like Patrick said it was the second largest house in the United States. Now, again, this might have been 20 years ago, so, and there might have been some exaggeration, but that's what he said, so let's just believe him. So the guy that had this land, and it was all forested land, and he built a mountain, he built a hill to put his house on. So he did that. The house is now built on top of this hill, but there's no trees anywhere because they're all down here. You can look out the window and see them in the distance, but he wanted them up here too. So he went around his property and selected the trees he wanted to move. And he would take this big oak or this big maple or whatever the trees were, and he This is before Patrick became involved with the job, but so here's the tree he wants in his forest. So you have to go in and you have to excavate around the root ball of the tree. And this is a lot of traumatic activity for the poor tree because the roots are, much bigger than just the root ball. And if you can dig this out and it still lives after 2 years, then you can safely move it. So the trees that hello, Will Hodge. So the trees that he liked and survived, then he built a road. He had to build a road to move the tree out. I mean, there might have been a little dirt road or something, but he had to have a bigger road because the tree is big. The little digger wasn't very big, but the whole tree is big. So he had to make a wider road in order to move the tree out. So they got a big crane and they lifted up the tree and they plopped it down on the trailer, the flatbed trailer, and it broke the axles because they were too heavy. They were huge, huge trees. And so then they tried it again using scaffolding to distribute the weight more on this truck, and the truck broke again. The axles broke or something broke. So, and this is the part that might not be entirely true, but he bought this guy with the trees and the land and the mountain, the man-made mountain. He bought from NASA the tractor that used to move the space shuttle around to move the trees around his property. So there you go. Speaking of money. What are your thoughts? Hi, Will. How are you doing? Will Hodge is a pen collector and pen user. I think more of a user than a collector. I would classify him as a user rather than a collector. But he may decide to correct me if I'm wrong. Will is a guy who uses his pens for journal keeping, journal writing. I suppose Friedrich does that too. It's the last thing I do with them. Podunk Acres, yep. I'm getting hungry. I think it's time for lunch. So I think I might sign off in a minute. Will, let's plan a time when we can chat, and Friedrich, when you are home and can take your pants off and turn on your camera. And KB, if you're still here, maybe you can join us too, with or without your pants. And finally, Fixius Maximus. Maybe someday you might want to join us too. Be good.